This is the best piece of advice I've ever received, by the way, is just because you're a female, don't be a cruise director. And I had no idea what she meant by that. She walked off to get a cup of coffee, and I'm standing there looking very perplexed, I'm sure. And she walks back and she was like, "You're still thinking about that?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know what that means." And she says, "I want you in these meetings not as a note taker, but because you are the smartest one in the room about what we're going to talk about. And I want your feedback, your input." And she goes, "Don't offer to get anybody any water. Don't offer to take any notes for anybody or share your notes." She goes, "You need to take care of what I need you to take care of on this trip." And she was like, "And moving forward in your career, that's the best advice I can give you."
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Revenue Playbook Chronicles. I am your host, Gene Lytle. I have a special guest here, Jamie Grabert, which is the co-founder of the Consistency Group, also known as TCG. Mainly, I guess their main focus is strategic communications. I believe that's correct, right, Jamie?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
totally right.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for coming on board. And tell me, where are you calling from today?
So today I am calling from the San Francisco Bay Area. We live and work on a small island on the east side of the bay called Alameda.
Alameda. So is it 70 degrees all the time there or what?
We're like 65.
Oh my gosh, even better
So,
for me.
yeah. It's funny. Everyone thinks California warm and all these things, but no, here in the Bay Area, and it's also dependent on where you are. The further inland you go, the hotter it gets, the closer to the bay or the ocean you are, the cooler it is. So no, it's pretty much it's interesting though, having lived in the Midwest and then Southern California and now here. 65 in California doesn't feel like 65 in the Midwest. It's closer to 80. So
Got it.
I don't know. It's very interesting. We have lots of microclimates here.
So is it a constant breeze or does it fluctuate?
So because you have a lot of interesting terrains, you have high desert, mountains, low desert, valleys. California in general has like throughout the day there are days where it's very windy, but generally speaking, there are very predictable times of day. Morning, late afternoon, early evening tend to be windier than other times. The rest of it's just kind of a nice soft breeze, which is also great if you are a sailor, which I've recently taken up. So
Sweet. Well, maybe we'll learn a little bit about that. That's awesome. So the main reason why we have you here, Jamie, is we want to hear your journey. We want to know where you started and where you've, maybe showed some struggles, maybe showed some pain, maybe showed some wins. We'd like to hear all of it, so don't leave anything out. And you can go back as far as you could remember if you want, like when your first words, or you can start at your job wherever you want. So
all right.
it's all yours.
So I was just kind of like, I was born in a small town in Indiana, and from that you learn a lot living in places like that. You deal with a lot of seasons, you deal with a lot of different things, and so starting out at a young age. Also, my grandparents had a farm, and I used to love to just go out, be outside. I was always outside at home. And so, just always, my parents would probably tell you that anything that I do 110%. And to the point that even when I was very young, I had an accident that landed me in a full body cast for 4 months. I was 6 years old. And when I first started walking again, they told my parents, she'll never be able to be an athlete again. She'll never be that active kid because of where my injuries were. And my mom looks at the doctor and she says, "You don't know my daughter." And that has kind of been who I am, throughout the entirety of my life to date. Is if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in. Whether it's a success or a failure, I'm just going to run into it head first, and whatever the consequences. And I have a kind of a unique perspective on that. Is that I don't look at necessarily things that don't go the way I planned as a failure. I look at them as learning opportunities. And so being able to take that mindset into something and not sit and dwell in it has helped me tremendously. And I think that goes back a lot to that accident of just that, you have to and then some things you crawl before you can walk, and I had to learn to do both all over again.
Oh,
So that's where, my life is kind of, that's the direction that my life has taken. I did play sports. I had a dual sport athlete to, or I'm sorry, a dual sport scholarship to play in college before having another injury. And that ended that. But I threw that energy into coaching and working with young kids and thinking, okay, I want to give back to something that's given a lot to me. And so, rolling that into to my career has also been something where I still enjoy helping people. I don't look at coworkers as competition. I look at all of us as a team, and when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. And so having that mindset, whether I'm a part of a team as, just a team member or as a leader amongst the team, it's always whatever example that you can set, whatever, put in the extra time, learn as much as you can, and help others to be the best that they can. From a leadership standpoint, that's how I did. Is I would have, regular one-on-one touch points with my team and say, you get a few minutes to gripe. Everybody has them. Send them to me because
right.
I don't want them going outside of the org. Send them to me. We'll sit down. Tell me what you first. Tell me, am I fixing this, or do you just need to get this off your chest? Because if you don't tell me that, I'm just going to go fix it. But then it would come down to, okay, where do you need more support? What barriers do I need to remove for you to do your best work? Where do you need? And sometimes it was, I think you just need to take a day off, please. Let that request cross my desk, please. And, then we'll start fresh, the next day. So, I I try to make my life more about doing the right thing and helping people. And that's really kind of how all of my jobs have come to be. I have a degree from the University of Southern Indiana in English. I've also taken courses actually during COVID. I spent that time taking marketing data science from MIT. And then now I use both of those to serve our clients. But I started to kind of learn more about how all of that works and the importance of it, which has been great for the implementation of AI. And so everything that I've done to that point has always been learning, helping people, whether it's helping people that are on my team, helping clients get the best results that they can. And I learned along the way that, the universe, God, whoever you choose to acknowledge, tends to like those kind of hearts where you make it about helping others and doing the right thing and just being a good human for the limited amount of time that we're here. And, my career, both my career and my personal life have both benefited from that tremendously. We shared just before the call, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so that's a really interesting place to be too. It's a combination of his, hers, and theirs, and so the youngest of us is 20 years my junior. So and yeah, it's I've had a very interesting, unique, but I would say fun journey, and there's really no part of it that I would give back. So
Because it turns you into who you are today, right?
exactly, yeah. I mean, that's yeah, no better way to put that.
Yeah, right, right. So I have a question because
Okay.
you got your degree in English. So
Mm-hmm.
what did you have an aspiration to be a teacher or something before? Where were you headed in that direction?
So originally, I had wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Once I started coaching and helping others or helping young kids, I realized that, I really do enjoy this. I might actually enjoy this more than playing, and which was really eye opening. And I thought I've always been a pretty decent writer, and, also being just loving books. If you look, there's books all around me all the time, and so, it was a natural and an easier thing. The funny part about it was I actually started out going to school for business law in college, and I had to take a class. I was taking my gen ed requirements, and I had to take a class called situational ethics. And my parents laughed. They're like, "You're never passing that class," because
Wow.
I'm a very things are very black and white generally. As a younger person now, there's a lot more gray. But when I was younger, everything was very black and white. And my parents are like, "You are never going to survive this class. Never." They weren't wrong. I did battle with that instructor, every class and I squeaked through, and I was like, if this is what my life is going to be like every day, I can't do it. I can't do
Wow.
it. And I had a professor who I just loved in the English department, and she was probably one of the more challenging humans that I have ever met in my entire life, but she made me a much, much better writer. And she was just that lady who she just cared so much that she was so hard on everybody. I mean, down to, I can still remember you had to have different colored pens for her class, and you would print out your essays, and you would have to have different colored markers, and like you would have to circle weak verbs with a red pin. You would have to circle just these little things so that you could acknowledge your sentence structure when she gave you feedback. And she would turn it out, and you could only have so much red, green, and blue on this page. And if you had more than that, then she would, adjust your grades. And so I can just remember, like, but she would have you over for dinner. She had the whole class over for dinner, and then also taught literature. And she was like, she goes, I think you're in the wrong major. And so I went in, and she was assigned even my academic advisor, and yeah, that's how it all happened.
Isn't that crazy how certain individuals in your life is it's so pivotal on how they treat you to where it guides you in a
Mm-hmm.
different way. Like I wanted to be a draftsman, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really an art person really, but I
Mm-hmm.
figured I could figure out T squares and triangles and things like that. And then all of a sudden I start drawing and I'm like, how is this possible? So
Mm-hmm.
it's the influence of your teachers or maybe other family members are so crucial in
Mm-hmm.
your upbringing. So it's interesting that you had those 20 years ahead of your siblings that
Mm-hmm.
it'd be interesting to see how you influenced them also in what you did.
It's interesting that you say that, because they'll tell me occasionally, I did this and I thought of you, or I was in a meeting and I could just hear your voice come out and I have to laugh at that. I can totally see it, because yeah, I did do a little bit of that big sistering, I'm sure.
Nice. All right. So what was next before you started your agency?
So I have been doing marketing communications, NPR, off and on for almost 30 years. While I was finishing my degree, I had started working just as a contract writer for a business publication in Indiana. And when I graduated college, they actually offered me a full time job. So, and then so when you're doing that, you kind of can't work in marketing as much, because it does detract from the reality of being a journalist and being serious and not putting spin on things. But so I would off and on, if I was not, either a contract journalist. So if I had like an actual full time job at this point, then I would contract doing other writing pieces, but it wouldn't be in that. Or I would do website writing, which is a little even more different. So I've kind of always been in that marketing realm. And about 15 years ago, I started talking to recruiters. And they were like, you have a great profile. You've been published in, all of these big journals globally. You have huge, just Rolodex back then at your disposal. You know, have you thought about going to get an agency job? Because that's really all that's missing from your resume. And I was like, oh man, I've worked with agencies, like, in these other jobs, and I don't know that I want to do that. But then I look at the paycheck that they're getting versus what I'm getting, and it kind of becomes a no brainer.
Right.
So I take a job at an agency, and it was interesting. I The first day I walked in, and I was like, okay, you can do this. You've got this. I was giving myself pep talks, and I was like, 5 years. All I'm staying 5 years. This is because this is what they told me that I needed, was actual agency experience. I can do the work, I can do the strategy work, I can do the writing, I can do all of these pieces, but having that agency experience was what was lacking. Okay. So I go in, I am the director of media for this company. And the first thing the guy says to me is, we need you to revamp our process. And I'm like, well, okay, what is your process? Well, we don't really have one. Oh, it's going to be one of these. Okay.
Wait.
So I did that. I created the process. I grew the client base to the point where, all of the different divisions were saying, hey, can you sit in on this meeting? And I looked at my boss. I'm like, you're going to have to hire me more help because I have more than 40 hours of work to do a week already. And now I'm in meetings 7 hours a day. There's no way that I can keep up at this pace. And so we started building my team. I had just a phenomenal team of people that allowed me then to, continue to explore other ways to grow our department and our offerings. One of them being data. So at the time, there wasn't really, it was kind of like the wild, wild west of data science in terms of marketing agencies. And then IAB was starting to create some sort of guidelines around it and give it some structure and some guidance as far as, the international, it's IAB's International Ad Bureau,
Okay.
and they were starting to do, kind of really own that and be like, this is what you need to know. Well, then, how does advertising tie into these other channels and what? So, we started working, we kind of broke down barriers. And if you've never worked in an agency, they're very siloed. They're very, this department is this department is this department is this. Well, because my department had to do with advertising, and we needed to track every click, and we needed to, be able to handle attribution, all of the different functions that come with that. And reporting became a piece of it. Is how are we doing? Well, I don't know that if I don't have access. So our department started spilling over into all of these other things. And then it became, oh, well, sponsored content is a thing. So now we have to work. So our department started to kind of morph into this thing because it needed to. And we were tearing down silos within the agency itself. And so I started getting more exposed to all of these other things. And I was like, oh, great, I want to learn that. Well, ADHD is my superpower.
Right.
So I'm able to process and learn and move things on very quickly. And so I just decided, hey, I'm going to go to school and learn more about data science. So I take some tests, do some things, get accepted to MIT, and roll through that program. Thank God it was COVID, or I probably wouldn't have been able to stay focused to do it.
Right.
So, it was kind of one of those things. But then even putting that to work, even more so as I learned so much more from that, and the depths and why you need the qualities and what equations to use, what equation to use here, there, and where does it make the most sense and why, when you're trying to measure accurately. And so it was just, everything has kind of like always been, okay, well, I'm trying to help this, so I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to learn this, and then, oh, this helps this. And so, and I would encourage, my team to do the same thing. They would come to me and they were like, hey, I think this would be great. I want to learn this. Great, let's do it. Bring me a cost and a program, and we'll handle it. And so it was just kind of how I launched into this. And I was sitting in a meeting. All of a sudden, I kind of became indispensable to many of our clients because I could see a bigger picture.
Right.
And I was in a meeting with my boss, and the CEO walks in one day, and he was like, do you have a passport? Yes. And he
Where's
said,
this one going?
yeah. I'm like, where? I mean, I had at this point been flying all over the country, during
Okay.
COVID, right after COVID. So I didn't care to get on a plane. I was like, where am I going? And he said, well, this client has requested that you go to Europe for 2 weeks. Okay, great. I'm out of here. When do I leave? What do I need to do? And my boss says, oh, no, you're busy. I'll go. And the CEO goes, no, we're sending Jamie. And he couldn't believe it because he had been the one prior to that going. And so it was very interesting. And we get to the airport to leave with the client. And she said, this is the best piece of advice I've ever received, by the way, is just because you're a female, don't be a cruise director. And I had no idea what she meant by that. And so she walked off to get a cup of coffee, and I'm standing there looking very perplexed, I'm sure. And she walks back and she was like, you're still thinking about that? And I said, yeah, I don't know what that means. And she says, she said, I want you in these meetings not as a note taker, but because you are the smartest one in the room about what we're going to talk about. And I want your feedback, your input. And she goes, don't offer to get anybody any water. Don't offer to take any notes for anybody or share your notes. She goes, you need to take care of what I need you to take care of on this trip. And she was like, and moving forward in your career, that's the best advice I can give you. And from that day on, I've I've lived by that, and it has served me well, because what I didn't realize is the Midwesterner in me always wants to help. And so, it's like, oh yeah, I can help you with that. Oh yeah, I'll do that. Well, she's like, that minimizes, your actual skills of offering to grab someone else coffee, or, oh, I'll be the transcriptionist for this meeting. She goes, you don't need to do that. She goes, if people want to know something, if they want to remember something, they need to be responsible for their own notes. And I've never heard that before in a meeting. And so that was some advice that I actually gave to the females on my team too, because it is more of a female thing than a male thing. And that was kind of one of my parting thoughts to them too, is like, you're bigger than your job. You're bigger than your role here, and don't let anybody tell you different, and don't ever become a cruise director. And they knew what that meant. And so, that's that for, and both of them, I still do talk to my team, by the way, over LinkedIn or through other social channels, occasional text. But they tell me, hey, I had the opportunity to be a cruise director today, and I chose not to. So,
Sweet.
so I do know that one landed. But it's all, it all leads up to why my partner and I started the consultancy group. And so, what that is we both came from a job. Well, back up a little bit. So nearing the end of year 4, almost to year 5, it came up that I was sitting in a meeting with another client, and she looks at me and she says, why are you still here? And I kind of laughed, and I was like, because I put myself on the 5-year plan. And she goes, well, you really only needed 3. And I was like, fair, but also some of that time was COVID. So, and she's like, no, she's like, seriously, she said, you don't need anything that they're offering you. If anything, they're making a lot of money from what you do. You need to do this for you. And I was like, okay, well, I like a nice steady paycheck too, so I need to, And she was like, you'll have no trouble, trust me. About a month later, where I'm sitting in a meeting, and I get a text message from her that says, call me when you can. And I said, okay. So I finish my meeting, I go outside and I call, and I assume something's wrong or something big's happening, because I've never received that text from her before. It's usually an email or something. And she says, I'm leaving, and I've been hired by this company. And when you leave, call me, because I'm going to offer you some work. I was like, okay, I don't really have a timeline for that. I mean, it was coming close, but it wasn't quite there yet. And through a series of events, I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm done. I gave my notice, and I called her, and she was like, great, I have some work for you. I gave my 2 weeks, as I should, and began transitioning things out. And so that first day I was available, and I called her, and I said, I was like, I would love to do some work, but I'm going to take 2 weeks for me. I live in LA. I just moved here, a year ago, and I've not even remotely explored enough of this area. And she says, great, I will begin pulling all these things together. And when you come back, I have plenty of work for you. And I was like, okay. So I literally had 2 weeks between that. And so I just kind of started doing a little contract work. I was working about 20 hours a week, and still hiking and going to the beach and going to the mountains and having all the fun, And then about, I don't know, a month and a half later, I get a call from a former client, or a former client, meaning someone who had been a client where I had worked, and she had taken another job. And she was like, I need your help. And so now I have another client. A former coworker goes to a different company and is like, hey, this place has 4 divisions. I need help with marketing. Can you help me? And so all of a sudden, I now have 6 clients, and I'm working 45 hours a week again. And I'm not really sure how that happened, but it's been great. It's been a very broad set of clients that I've had. I meet my partner about a year and a half into consulting on my own. I'm so busy that I am just not able to get it all done. She looks at me and she's like, so I'm leaving this fintech. And she had been the VP of people for a fintech here in the Bay Area. And she was like, I don't really know what my next chapter holds. But I see that you're really busy. Do you need some help? yeah, that would be great. So she, you know, kind of roll. It's not really a change. It's more of a, not really a pivot, but just kind of a, how do you reapply these roles, right? How do you
Okay.
readjust or reapply? And so it moved more into internal comms. And then, so it was just kind of like this evolution of things. And then it was like, all of a sudden we have 8, 9 clients, and hey, why don't we just make this official and create, you know, so we went through all the paperwork, created an LLC, and then an S corp behind that. So we have all the, you know, corporate capabilities and things like that as we grow, and we have umbrellas and all of these kind of things. So we've had some really great guidance on that and some not so great guidance on that.
I was just going
Uh,
to ask you, was there a big transition going from an employee mindset to now you own a company and being able to actually do business? How different was that from what you were accustomed to?
so not a lot, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So because I'd been, you know, consulted off and on, or been a contractor freelancer off and on for most of my life, I'm sorry. So because of that, I had always had this kind of mindset that, you know, oh, I just got to go find business. So, and it was really interesting because in my last agency role, it was referred to as Jamie's a great hunter gatherer. And so it was one of those situations where, you know, I just kind of naturally stepped into it. You have to go out and you have to find customers. You have to find, you know, people to, that you have to just determine who you want to market to, or who do you want to talk to, who do you want to be your clients, who do you know, what are your values, who are you going to take on, who are you not. And I think we were fortunate in that we already knew the people, or I knew them to start. Now we have clients that, you know, my partner has brought in as well. And so, you know, but there are people that, you know, these are people that we already know, they identify with our, you know, with our values. And so, you know, it makes it a whole lot easier. And this, the only mindset is, you know, oh well, if I'm a little off today or a little lackluster today, it's not, you know, I'm still getting a paycheck tomorrow.
Right.
You know, the main difference is, you know, you just always have to be on. And there's really, you know, that's just kind of how it is,
Well,
you
it
know. And
sounds like
that's,
that's the way you were anyway. So,
it was, I mean, I am a firm believer in, you know, I'm not going to take on a client if I'm not going to give it 100%. I'm not going to, you know, take on a project or do work that is just, you know, something to phone in, right? I'm not going to take it if I'm not going to do it unless I can do it well, or unless I'm willing to learn to be able to do it well. And that is one thing that we do. We take a lot of pride in, is that I'll give you an example. We went to visit a client in Boston a couple of weeks ago, or about, yeah, a few weeks ago. And my partner was asking him some questions about, you know, the sales team and how, what their process is and things like that. Because what we like to be able to do is we like to have access to sales. Most orgs there's a distinct separation between marketing and sales. We don't like that. Sales are the guys who are talking to the customers. We also need access to product people so that we understand all the bells and whistles, the functionality, as well as the features and benefits. But more importantly, what problems are we solving? And how does your product make the world a better place, or make this process better? And my partner's asking him, well, what kind of, you know, support do you have? What kind of, you know, sales support? What kind of, he looks at her, and very seriously, he says, the only real support I have in this is Jamie. And she kind of looks at me, and I kind of look at her, and I'm like, I don't know of a better compliment than that.
right, exactly.
You know, is like, that's, and so we ultimately kind of become extensions of teams. You know, we recently did an example is, we recently did or in the midst of doing mission, vision, values with a client. They're a spin-off of an org, and it's a whole thing. And we did their values first because we wanted to work with the team, and we've been working with them since the spinoff happened a little over a year ago. And the CEO looks at us, and she was like, you guys are able to do so much because you understand the soul of who we are. And that's ultimately, you know, what we want to do, is when we take on a new client, a new project, we learn first. We're not jumping into this thing. We're not going to say we can deliver these results. We need to really truly understand what problem we're solving for you before we ever, start helping you solve the problems of others with your product or service. And that's really where we come at everything from, is what support do you need? We want your org to succeed. We want your team to succeed. But more importantly, we want you as a human to succeed, because that's our end game. Taking a look at like Maslow's hierarchy, when people feel safe, they feel secure, they perform better. So when someone knows you're not there to take your job, a lot of times people bring consultants in and they're like, great, you're going to blow up our org. You're going to restructure everything. You're going to, take over from my job. You're going to do all this. We don't want your jobs. If we wanted jobs working for other people, we would have them.
Right.
We're here to support you and help make your life easier and hopefully better. And that's where we come at this from. We don't that's ultimately our end game, is that. And that's kind of like, I have been talking a little bit about AI, and that's ultimately how we think of and how we use AI too. Is it's not a supplement for a human. It's not here to take anybody's job. It's here to either make you more efficient, make you better, and help improve processes. And that's really kind of when we work with people on how they're using it, what do they use it for. That's also, the step that we take, is you need human intervention along the way, as do we, being your consultants. No one is going to be better at your job than you are. No one knows more about your internal org. I can learn as much as I can, but I'm not there every day, all day. So I will learn as much as I can through what you're giving me, what you're telling me, and help you apply that. And, a lot of times too, what we see is people are so close to things that like there's something very just aha right in front of their face, and we can kind of help identify that too. And that's just, how we came to be as a company, and more or less how we operate.
I think that's amazing. And it's there's something to be said, because what you do makes the difference of your clients, of if they can go out to dinner, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of car they drive, are they able to plan events and things. It's their quality of life is dependent on what you do for their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big responsibility. That's a big role to play. And especially when you know nothing about their industry, and you have to take the quality time to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an amazing gift to have. So kudos to you and your team. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we both managed people too, and not that we don't want to continue to do that, because if either one of us needed to or chose to, we would. But we do work with a team of people, but we work with another series of experts. We don't, one thing about us is we don't hand it off to a junior person. If you talk to me in a meeting, chances are I'm going to be doing the work, my partner is going to be doing the work, or another expert. And we will bring that expert into the org, whether whoever else is going to be, so that you're comfortable working with all of us. I may be your central point of contact, but one of those other people may be doing some work on a specific project because they're stronger in it. They have more knowledge or something, along that line. So we both have people that we'll bring in for special projects if it's something that we aren't experts in, or a field that we're not 100% sure of. Because for us, like you said, it is about putting food on the table, as the success of a business, all of those things, and is how they communicate, how they're perceived, and that's important to us. And so making sure that we have the right people come alongside of us, but they aren't employees of ours. They're also consultants, or experts for hire, so to speak, in those fields, to make sure that we're always bringing out the best in the work that we do, both for you or supporting you in.
Awesome. So you've been the strategic communications expert, as I'm going to call it,
Mm-hmm.
for the last 3 years together with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your goals coming up? And then maybe you could tell me what your ideal client is also.
Okay, so two very different questions.
Yes.
So a few years down the line, we both have interests, but we just love what we're doing. We work very well together, and we're very good about listening to each other, and our strengths are very complementary. So that being said, we'll still be around 5 years from now. I turned 50 later this year, so I got a lot of years ahead of
Woohoo!
me to work. Yes, yes. But yeah, but I can also see us, because we structured this company in a way that we can also pursue other interests that would fall within consulting. We actually have some other projects in the works as well. I don't sit still very well.
Oh, you're fine.
I don't sit. I don't. I'm like, okay, great. We have this company off the ground and it's running smoothly. Let's bring on. I'm a glutton for punishment. But yeah, so we'll be adding some new things for sure here in the next. Actually, we have a few that'll probably go live here in the next couple of months. And some of it is because my partner's daughter is majoring in wine and viticulture, Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and so there's some interest that we have in that now, and that she's actually helping with and she's excited about too. So we're kind of have something over in that realm. And so you never know,
So go
and
SLO, by the way. I wrestled for 1 year for the Mustangs.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
back in the day before I got hurt. Yeah,
Okay.
so that was interesting. But
Okay.
cool.
That's great.
Are you doing any writing yourself?
I do not as much writing as I would love to. There's a story. When I was a rookie journalist, there was a story about, is a murder in a small town kind of thing. My hometown had 7,500 people.
Wow.
And then I moved to California and it's like, that's a neighborhood. So I am working on kind of some researching with that. And I've talked to some people, but it ties back into an experience I had as a journalist. And so I've been working on it for a long time, and I pick it up and I put it down and I pick it up and I put it down. But yeah, I actually write every day, just usually for clients, but I do
Right.
when I have a few days, then yeah, I will. And I've working on finishing up a few ebooks that'll go up on we're about to launch a new website. I think that'll be right after 4th of July here. So we're about to launch a new website and we have some ebooks that we're going to put up there. So
Sweet.
just lots, yeah. So I never stopped writing, just the focus changes.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So we know you're going to continue your agency. You have
Mm-hmm.
some outside influences that have gathered your interest that you're hoping to do. Like you
Yeah.
said, you're just turning 50. You got lots of things to do. I'm reinventing myself at 61, so it's kind of
Okay.
interesting. But
Yeah.
if your ideal client, we were going to go over that. What would be the
Yeah.
ideal client that would fit your organization?
So that's really interesting, is because, when you first start a business, you pretty much take whatever work somebody wants to send your way, if it's in your wheelhouse. And if it's not, you learn and you do it anyway. But we're moving more into advanced sciences and deeper into manufacturing that's associated with that, but more along the lines of the strategic, the PR, those type of communications, media, pretty much all things media, and really focusing more on that from a higher level. I've also been serving as, or done a couple of stints as a fractional CMO, one for a fintech, one for a kind of more of a scientific product. And so with that, it takes a lot more time than what you realize, and wanting to grow some of the opportunities that we have here. I'm kind of rotating out of that cycle. I've got I launched their marketing. They're going to hand it off to the owner's daughter now, so that's nice. She's recently graduated from college, so it seems like a good time to kind of transition out, and then we'll just be like when she needs a little extra support or somebody to bounce ideas off of. But generally speaking, we have some rules about being our client, and that is always, treat everyone in the room with respect. A lot of things you can do. So one way to feel that out is to take a client to dinner and watch how they treat the wait staff.
Yeah.
If they're disrespectful to the wait staff, it was a thank you for the opportunity, but no thank you for the work. That's just one. We like to work with people who are collaborative. We're not just an order taker for you. We want to be somebody's strategic partner, because we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that you have a strategy that works, that delivers the results that you're seeking. And, that also, though, is adaptable for the future. So that's something that a lot of people don't think. They think, well, this is one of the things that has driven me crazy is I get calls from other agencies and they're like, hey, can you take a look at this media plan? My client's like, why are we still in this? 3 media people have worked on it since we first got this client. And it turns out that they're running the same ads in the same publication or with the same platform because it's what they've always done. not because it's where they need to be. And so, we do those kind of audits for people. And so coming to us and allowing us the space to work alongside of you is an important factor for our ICP. And then just in the segments that we serve, we do a lot for transportation and logistics. We work in semiconductor manufacturing supply chain, which is part of advanced manufacturing. We work in general industrial manufacturing or parts of the whole. So a client we recently signed on manufactures like tubing and fittings and different types of valves and things like that for the manufacturing process. So, and then of course, we do other services. We have one client that builds platforms for consulates to use.
Okay.
So, we do have a pretty broad, and all of that is listed on our website. And but really, as long as you're, a good human, you're a good partner, and you're kind of within those fields that we also do have some scientific nonprofits that
Okay.
we work with. So as long as you're kind of in our field of science or our field of study, so to speak, or the areas where, we seem to be able to provide maximum efficiencies and results, we'll at least entertain a conversation. How's that?
You'll at least take them to dinner.
Yeah, we'll at least take you to dinner.
Have you ever had to fire a customer or a client?
As a matter of fact, I have. I just did so a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, tell me about how you felt and what the reasons were, if you can.
Yeah, it actually stems back to, sometimes a client outgrows you. Sometimes you have a leadership change and a client's persona or culture morphs. Sometimes it's just we don't have the same values. We're very much what's in the best interest of humanity, not what's in the best interest of our own checkbooks. Believe me, we could take on other clients and make a whole lot more money than we do if we chose to do that. But this particular client was kind of going against what we consider to be our values, both as individuals and as an organization. And we learned a long time ago that if the work doesn't feel good, you're not going to do as good of a job. You're not as invested in it, and it's not enjoyable for you or the client really to have that kind of relationship because it becomes a little bit strained. And it's just because it's the nature of how humans are, right? It's
Right.
not because one party or the other. It's just, And so we had a very honest conversation with the client, and we just said, we appreciate the business. We've enjoyed working with you in the past. However, it's time for us to move on. And, you need to find someone who's more in line with your values and, the direction that you want to go next. And it was a very polite, very kind conversation because we work hard to keep them that way. And we provided a transition plan, a transition guide, and we worked the process
That's
and
cool
even
that
ended
you have
up,
a transition plan. I think
yeah.
that's because, it says something about your organization versus cutting them off and saying, okay, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool that you helped them out.
Yeah, and we've also extended the invitation as you onboard other people. If you need us, if you need us to provide something or you have questions, of course we'll still answer those. So I mean, and it just happens sometimes that companies needs change and you're not that need anymore. And that's
Right.
okay too. And I think that's where a lot of agencies and a lot of consultants and people go wrong is like they have such a tight grip because they're like, I have to have that income. I have to have, I can't have somebody go away and think I didn't do a good job. You can't take it personal.
Right.
I take a lot of business lessons. I'm fascinated by the mob, by the way.
Nice.
And so, I mean, I'm right here by Alcatraz, so, why not? But, one of the things that I learned from the Godfather is it's not personal, it's business. Right. And if you make it too personal, that impacts the business. So, just be polite, continue to do the best job that you can. But in that transition period, like draw some hard boundaries and the things that you used to drop on my lap at a moment's notice, you don't get to do that anymore. And you just have to stick to that. And that's really hard. And, the big lesson that I've learned in the last 3 years is everybody doesn't need access to me 24 hours a day. Working in an agency, my phone would ring at 3 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
So, now I control that. and you control how a client treats you. And if you teach them that it's okay to contact you at midnight, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, whatever, they will do it, and they will do it consistently. And so you have to kind of establish some boundaries and then be willing to hold them. And if a client doesn't adhere to that, they don't need to be a client because they clearly don't respect you. And I think that's a hard thing, for people to do, a hard transition, because like I said in the beginning, when you're first starting a business, it's all about, it's feast or famine, baby. And if I'm going to feast, I'm going to feast right now and build up, cash reserves or whatever I need to do. But, we kind of got ourselves away from that feast or famine mode. We decided, we were like, this is what we want. So, again, speaking it out loud, right? We want to have steady clients. We want them to be, essentially a retainer. So there's a steady monthly income. We don't want it to be all one big client or conglomerate that we do the majority of the work for. We want it spread out over multiple. So if somebody needs to go away, it doesn't impact the bottom line greatly.
Right.
And that miraculously for us, anytime we've really adhered to our values and, that, we want good things, we put good out, good comes back to us. And so, we have this hard conversation with a client, and then we start getting people submitting forms on our website. Hey, I saw that you're doing this. Can we have a conversation? And that leads to a client. So,
Right.
It tells us that the way that we're conducting ourselves, the way that we're conducting our business is not only a good representation of who we are, but it's also kind of the people that people want to do business with. And at the end of the
Right.
day, that's what you want to do.
Well said. So this is the time that I ask my question I ask everybody, and it's amazing from different directions where it goes. So let's assume that our listeners didn't get everything we had to say, or they got
Mm-hmm.
busy or whatever. And there was one thing that was so important to you, that one thought or one message that you wanted to make sure they left with. What would that be?
Well, I mean, obviously, don't be a cruise director, right?
Right. We knew that one.
You knew that one. But the other one is, it doesn't matter how many times you reinvent yourself, just do it. If there's something that you really are truly passionate about, just do it. Whether it's within your current organization or you're trying to decide, should I start this business or not, just do it. You'll figure it out. ChatGPT, use that, use Claude, have a conversation with Perplexity. There are so many tools at your disposal right now that you can use to reach a goal, start a business, whatever, that you just have to start. And people say, oh, I need to wait till I'm ready, or I need to do this first. I need to do this first. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can build a ship while you sail it. And, all you need is the whole. And in this case, all you need is the idea. Just go do it.
Very well. I like that. And it's like I've been accused from my wife mostly that I have a habit of jumping off the cliff and trying to figure out my landing on the way down. Right.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, but that's also part of the fun, and it's what makes your organization unique, right? Or working with you unique, is like when that client feels like it's, like you said, jumping off a cliff, and they're like, I don't know, you're like, we got you, because we've already been there. We'll grab you before your parachute has a chance to fail, right?
Perfect. Right.
So that's kind of how you have to approach it, is just like, if you don't risk anything, you don't really gain anything. And so take a risk, take a step, try something new. Whether it's, I'm almost 50 years old, I'm learning to sail. Why not?
Absolutely.
I'm in a gorgeous place. I have access. I get to sail on San Francisco Bay, for crying out loud. Like, why not try it, right? I don't know that much. I have a little cheat sheet of how I tie all these knots because I'll never remember them all. But it's okay, because there are people there that have sailed, that know what they're doing, that teach me. And it's kind of the same way, in business. It's like, find mentors, find resources. There's plenty of them out there. Put a form feed or fill out a form on my website. I'll help you out. I don't know. But, just do it. Just start.
Awesome. Good advice. Very good advice. Also, I want you to do me a favor, Jamie, is I
Okay.
want you to send me a video of you sailing. Okay?
Okay.
I want to
All
see
right.
it. I want to see it. I
All
think that would be
right.
great. I'm probably too much of a chicken to try to go try it, but I might ride with somebody, you know what I mean? But not have to do anything strategic anyway. But
Okay.
that sounds interesting. Jamie, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really do appreciate you being on the podcast. And to our listeners, again, thank you for watching a new podcast for Revenue Playbook Chronicles. If you liked our content, please like, share, subscribe, hit whatever button you have there. It does help the algorithm. And we will see you on the next one.